Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you are not truly in control of your own thoughts. That the voice in your head, the one you've always believed was you, is actually the product of hidden forces buried deep within your subconscious. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, didn't just believe this. He built an entire theory to prove it. And his findings were so unsettling that they still challenge our sense of identity over a century later. Freud claimed that your mind is like an iceberg. What you can see, the conscious part, is only the tip. Beneath the surface lies the vast, dark territory of the unconscious. A chaotic reservoir of hidden desires, buried memories, and primal instincts you'd rather deny. And here's the disturbing part. These unseen forces quietly manipulate your choices, shape your personality, and even sabotage your happiness without your permission. By the time we're done, you may start to question, if I'm not the one making my decisions, then who is? Before we dive into the shadowy depths of your mind, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who enjoys peeling back the layers of human psychology. Trust me, the insights you're about to hear might just change the way you see yourself and everyone around you. Forever the iceberg of the mind. Picture an iceberg drifting through the freezing waters of the North Atlantic. What you see above the surface is sharp, solid, and deceptively small. But beneath the waves, a massive, shadowy structure stretching far deeper than you can imagine. Freud believed your mind works the exact same way, and the part you're aware of is just the tip. That tiny, visible portion, that's your conscious mind. It's where your active thoughts live, the things you're aware of right now. Maybe you're thinking about this video, the sound of my voice, or the room around you. It feels like the conscious mind is the whole story. But in Freud's view, it's not even close. Just below the surface lies the preconscious. Think of it as the waiting room of your mind. Memories, knowledge, and ideas you're not currently thinking about, but can access if you try. Your home address, your best friend's face, that embarrassing thing you did last year. It's all stored there, just waiting to be pulled up. But the real weight of the iceberg, the part that can crush a ship, is the unconscious mind. This is the dark ocean beneath your awareness. Here, Freud said, is where the mind hides its most disturbing material. Childhood traumas, forbidden desires, shameful impulses, and instincts we'd rather not admit even to ourselves. You can't simply will these thoughts into awareness, they're buried for a reason. Yet, they still influence everything you do. Here's the unsettling twist. The unconscious isn't passive. It doesn't just store your past. It actively shapes your present. It nudges your reactions, fuels your habits, and sometimes makes you act in ways you can't explain. Ever blurt something out and think, why did I say that? Or sabotage your own plans for no clear reason. Freud would say that's your unconscious breaking through. One of Freud's most controversial claims was that our unconscious mind often runs on instinct, not logic. It doesn't care about social rules or polite behavior. It's raw, emotional, and primal, and it's always looking for a way to get what it wants, even if it has to trick you into doing it. Think about that for a second. You go through your day believing you're making conscious, rational choices, but what if those choices are just the end result of hidden battles happening deep inside your mind? According to Freud, you're not the sole captain of your ship. You're more like a passenger, and the real commander operates far below deck. And that's why Freud's iceberg is so haunting. It forces us to accept that most of who we are is hidden, even from ourselves. The question isn't whether the unconscious exists. It's whether we can ever truly know what's down there. The ID, ego, and superego. If the iceberg explains where your thoughts live, Freud's next model explains who is running the show. And here's the disturbing part. There isn't just one you. There are three competing forces inside your mind, each with its own agenda. The ID, the ego, and the superego. Let's start with the ID. Imagine a wild animal locked in a cage inside your skull. That's your ID. It's pure instinct, pure desire, pure want. The ID doesn't care about consequences or morality. It only asks, what do I want right now? Food, pleasure, safety, revenge, whatever satisfies its primal needs. And it wants it instantly.
No paciencia.
No filter. If the ID had its way, you'd act on every impulse without thinking twice. But then there's the superego, the strict moral authority. If the ID is your inner child screaming for candy, the superego is the overbearing parent telling you no. It's built from the rules, values, and beliefs you've absorbed since childhood. From parents, teachers, religion, and society. It's the voice that says, that's wrong. You'll regret that. People will judge you. The superego can be noble, but it can also be merciless, drowning you in guilt or shame when you step out of line. Caught between these two is the ego, the negotiator. The ego's job is brutal. It has to keep the ID's wild demands in check without triggering the superego's punishments. It lives in the realm of reality, constantly asking, how can I get what I want without destroying myself in the process? The ego is the reason you don't quit your job in a burst of rage, or eat cake for every meal, or scream at someone just because they annoyed you. Here's where things get fascinating, and a little unsettling. The ID never stops pushing. The superego never stops judging. And the ego is under constant pressure, like a diplomat stuck between two nations at war. Every decision you make, from the clothes you wear to the people you date, is, in Freud's view, a compromise between these three forces. Take a simple example: you're at a party. The ID sees someone attractive and says, go talk to them. Now, the superego warns, don't make a fool of yourself. People will think you're desperate. The ego steps in and says, okay, I'll approach them, but I'll start with a casual joke so it's socially safe. That little mental debate, it happens constantly, often so fast you don't notice it. But sometimes the system fails. The ID bursts through and you do something reckless. Or the superego crushes you with so much guilt that you freeze entirely. Either way, you're reminded that the self you think is in control is actually a fragile balance between three invisible voices. And if those voices ever fall out of sync, that's when the real psychological chaos begins. Defense mechanisms. The mind's invisible armor. Your mind has a secret security system. It doesn't guard you from burglars or wild animals. It protects you from something far more dangerous: the truth. When reality becomes too painful, too threatening, or too overwhelming, your psyche deploys invisible strategies called defense mechanisms. And here's the unsettling twist. They work so well you don't even realize they're being used on you by you. Freud believed the ego uses these defenses to keep the ID's primal urges and the superego's crushing guilt from tearing you apart. They're like psychological smoke screens, hiding uncomfortable truths so you can function without breaking down. But just like any defense system, they can malfunction, and when they do, they shape your life in ways you never intended. The most well-known is repression, the mental act of shoving disturbing thoughts deep into the unconscious, locking them away so you don't have to face them. You might not even remember the trauma, but your body and behavior might still carry its scars. Then there's denial, refusing to accept reality because it's too much to handle. A smoker might insist cigarettes aren't harming them. A partner might ignore obvious signs of betrayal. Denial isn't just lying to others, it's lying to yourself so convincingly that you believe it. Projection is sneakier. It's when you take feelings you can't accept in yourself and pin them on someone else. You might dislike a coworker but convince yourself they hate you. Or you feel guilty about cheating on a diet, so you criticize others for having no self-control. One of the more ironic defenses is rationalization, spinning a bad choice into a reasonable one. You didn't blow money on an expensive gadget because you're impulsive. No, it was an investment. You didn't avoid the gym because you were lazy. You were too busy. Then there's sublimation, the rare defense that can be productive. It's when you channel unacceptable urges into something socially acceptable. Aggressive energy might turn into competitive sports. Romantic frustration could fuel powerful art. It's the mind's way of turning darkness into something that looks like light. These mechanisms aren't inherently bad. In small doses, they keep you stable. Without them, the raw chaos of your inner world might overwhelm you. But here's the danger: use them too much and you start living in a carefully constructed illusion. You're no longer facing reality, you're editing it. And that's the real psychological trap. You might think you're protecting yourself, but you could be locking yourself inside a mental cage. One you built, one you forgot was even there. Freud's dark legacy. dreams, desires, and the unconscious. Freud once called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. In his view, every night when you sleep, your conscious guard dogs, the ego and superego, loosen their grip, allowing the hidden world beneath to speak in symbols. But here's the disturbing part. Freud believed that behind almost every dream lies an unfulfilled desire, often one you'd rather not admit. These desires can be innocent or shockingly taboo. The dream disguises them in strange, surreal images, so you can experience them without your waking mind shutting down in horror. Think about it. Have you ever had a dream so bizarre that it made no sense, yet left you feeling unsettled when you woke up? According to Freud, that's because the dream wasn't nonsense at all. It was your unconscious using code, twisting the message just enough so your ego wouldn't reject it. Freud broke dreams into two layers: the manifest content, what you actually remember, and the latent content, the hidden meaning behind it. For example, you might dream of being trapped in a room with no exit. On the surface, it's just a weird nightmare. But beneath, it could represent feeling trapped in a relationship, a job, or even your own identity. This idea ties back to his belief that much of human behavior is driven by instincts and urges buried deep below awareness. He argued that many of these desires stem from childhood, a time when we were pure ID, driven entirely by pleasure-seeking without societal limits. As we grow, those desires don't vanish. They just get buried, waiting for moments like dreams to break through. Freud also believed the unconscious doesn't just shape our dreams. It leaks into our waking life in what he called parapraxis, or Freudian slips. You call your partner by your ex's name. You say, "I'm glad you're leaving," when you meant, "I'm sad you're leaving." To Freud, these weren't accidents. They were tiny cracks in the wall between your conscious and unconscious mind. Of course, Freud's theories about dreams and desires remain controversial. Many psychologists today argue that dreams don't always hide forbidden wishes. Sometimes they're just the brain sorting memories. But even skeptics admit one thing. Our unconscious mind holds incredible power over what we think, feel, and do, and we often have no idea it's happening. And maybe that's the most haunting part of Freud's legacy. He didn't just give us a theory, he gave us a reason to doubt ourselves, to wonder if our thoughts are really ours, or just whispers from the deep, reshaped into something we can bear to hear. When you realize you're not who you think you are, Freud's theories aren't just abstract psychology. If you take them seriously, they hit you in a place far deeper than the intellect. They shake your sense of self. Think about everything we've explored so far. The iceberg that hides most of your mind beneath awareness. The three inner forces fighting for control. The defense mechanisms editing your reality. And the dreams that reveal desires you'd rather deny. Put them together and one chilling conclusion emerges. The you think you know is, at best, only part of the story. Freud would argue that you live in a carefully managed illusion. Your conscious mind plays the role of narrator, telling a neat, logical story about your choices. But behind that story is an entire cast of hidden players. Instincts, fears, desires, memories, each pulling strings in ways you can't see. Here's a hard truth. Self-awareness doesn't mean control. You can know the theory, recognize the patterns, and still be swayed by unconscious forces. That's why people repeat toxic relationships, sabotage their own goals, or act in ways they swore they never would. It's not because they're weak. It's because part of them is operating on a script they didn't write. Modern neuroscience has complicated Freud's picture, but in many ways, it's confirmed his core insight. Much of what drives us happens beneath awareness. Brain scans show decisions forming milliseconds before we consciously make them. Emotional reactions flare before our logical mind can catch up. Science is whispering what Freud shouted: you are not the sole author of your mind. So what do you do with this knowledge? Some find it terrifying. If you're not fully in control, are you just a puppet to forces you can't see? Others find it liberating. If so much of who you are comes from the depths, maybe the goal isn't total control, maybe it's learning to listen. You can watch for your own defense mechanisms. You can pay attention to slips of the tongue, to dreams that stick with you, to emotions that feel bigger than the moment causing them. You can trace patterns back to old wounds and unspoken desires. That doesn't erase the unconscious, but it gives you a better map of the terrain. And maybe that's the final gift or curse of Freud's theory. It invites you to see yourself not as a fixed, unified self, but as a shifting conversation between light and shadow. To accept that you are both the storyteller and the story, the iceberg's tip and its hidden depths. Once you've seen that, you can never truly unsee it. The question is, now that you know you're not who you think you are, what will you do with the stranger inside your mind?